on, guys? Gotta forgive me, I'm a little bit tired today. I've been up editing videos for the last 2 days straight. Just trying to crank out some content and schedule them to upload while I am gone. Hence the reason why the 2017 Africa Twin is up on the lift. I am gearing up to go for a long trip. I live in West Palm Beach, Florida, and I'm going to be riding this beast from West Palm up to Mansfield, Ohio. And I'm going to bring you guys along with on the journey, so be sure to look out for that video upcoming. The reason for today's escapade, I wanted to bring you guys along on how I prepare a motorcycle for a long journey. Let's go ahead and dig into her and go over my little tips and tricks on to have a successful long distance travels with your motorcycle. And the first thing I like to start with before any motorcycle trip, if I know I'm going to be doing a lot of miles, is detailing. I would like to detail the bike, and I don't mean just a simple wash or a simple wipe down. I mean, give the thing a good, thorough detail. Such thorough detail that, say, if you had someone coming from Facebook Marketplace who's on his way with cash in hand to give you 12 times the value of your motorcycle if it's clean. That's the kind of detail that I like to give my bikes before a long trip, because you really get into the nooks and crannies of things. You're able to check your bolts and all of your stuff. You want to make sure that everything is tight and where it should be. You don't have any loose wires flopping around or anything like that. So things you want to check, as you're detailing the bike, you want to check your nuts and bolts and your hoses. Make sure there's no cracked or dry rotted hoses. Make sure that everything is good and pliable and clean. And just really thoroughly go through everything and just double check all of that stuff. You want to check things like tire pressure. And you want to check your tires, make sure there's no dry rotting, no cracks. Also, you want to check your depth of your tread in the middle and on the sides. Now, my rear tire is almost done, so before I take the trip, I do need to change the tire, which I have a brand new one right here, ready to go. So I just need to take this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the back wheel off, take it to the shop and let them change it. Now, I can change the tire myself, but I cannot balance them. I don't have a way of balancing them. I need to learn how to do it, but it's just something that I am not physically capable of at the moment. So I just take it to a shop and let them deal with it. So now another thing that you want to check is your chain tension and the quality of your chain. Is there a lot of rust on the chain? Is it, stretched? Is it any of that stuff? You really want to double check your chain, because this is one thing that is a kind of a safety thing, and you don't want this to break while you're on the road, because that could leave you stranded and down and bad could leave you down in a pretty bad way. So while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and clean and lube this chain and check my tension. And if you guys hear booms in the background, I apologize. That is leftover 4th of July, apparently. And per Rainbow's request, if any of you guys remember who he is, wipe the chain down with a rag after you clean it with the chain cleaner and the brush. A little extra step that he likes to do, and I've been doing it ever since he told me to do it. And it makes sense. Really get that grime off of there and hopefully help the longevity of your chain.
That was the right, so. Pretty much else.
I'm gonna go ahead and just add a nice little coating of chain wax. And then wipe off all of your excess that you get everywhere because it's inevitable. Inevitable. Good to go on the chain. And I'm pretty happy with my chain tension. I don't have the fancy tool that Rainbow has, but definitely I've done it this way a lot and I'm pretty confident in it. And the other thing you want to do is check all of your lights. Make sure that you have your low beam, your high beams, your turn signals, brake lights, hazards, and fog lights. Make sure you don't have any bulbs out. Everything is working properly. There's no wires hanging anywhere. Went ahead and pulled off the side cover and the cover to the air filter. We want to go ahead and check our air filter and check our coolant levels and make sure that our coolant is a good color and not too old and nasty, because we want to keep this engine nice and cool on our long journey. Another thing that we want to check regularly is going to be our battery. So you want to make sure that your battery tie downs are good. Make sure that battery is nice and tight and in place. You want to check your terminals, make sure they're not loose, and make sure that all of your connections are good. Another thing that you might want to check on your battery is the date code. See how old your battery is. Make sure that it's not too far out of date, and you know, you don't want to be out on the road, go to a hotel or a camp spot and wake up the next morning to a flat battery. Another thing that you want to check regularly are your fuses. Make sure that they are good and there's nothing loose and you don't have any blown fuses. And it's always good to carry extra fuses with you, which I'll get into that in a little bit. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and change our oil. Now, if your bike is not ready for an oil change yet, but it's been a little while, and I would just say go ahead and change it just to be on the safe side. That way you're starting over fresh. You can't hurt it by changing it a little bit early. Go ahead. This oil filter off, which is kind of a pain to get in there. Luckily I had a cup that is the right size. Yeah, this thing wasn't quite due for an oil change yet, but like I said, I'd rather be safe than sorry. Go ahead and put our oil filter back on. Not forget a little bit of that used oil on the finger on the old filter. On the new filter, I should say, not the old filter, but. And I'll get a wrench and just snug that up a little bit because it is hard to get in here and get that thing tight. Alright, so I got the drain plug in, the oil filter back on. I'm going to go ahead and add our oil. We are using Motul 10W40 full synthetic. Well, helps if I pulled the cap out. And for some reason this Motul oil is red. I've used it a couple of times now. I can't tell you why it's red, I don't know. But this bike takes 4.3 quarts of oil, so I'm going to add in this 4 quarts and then check it. Every time I use this oil, it feels wrong. I look at it going into the engine, I'm like, this looks like transmission fluid. As a mechanic, I'm looking at this and be like, this is wrong. All right, the next thing you want to check is your brake fluid reservoirs, front and rear brakes. Now, I'm not going to check the fluid on these because I just had these done. So I can physically see inside the reservoir here that is nice clean fluid. If your fluid's dirty, probably before a long trip, I would just go ahead and change out the fluid, maybe bleed the brakes just to get some fresh fluid through the system. And same thing on the front reservoir. Everything is nice and clean, good to go. And while you're checking the brakes, you want to go ahead and check your brake pads. Make sure that you have plenty of pad material on there. Check your rotors. Make sure there's no loose bolts. Everything is good. Make sure that none of the floating spacers, if you have a floating rotor, make sure that none of these are loose or missing. And go ahead and check the rear brake as well. Now, another thing that I like to do is anything that moves, can move, I'll take my multi-purpose lubricant spray and just each little part that can move is a lever, all that stuff. I just go ahead and add a tiny dab of that on every single part and piece that moves, including my brake levers. And I'm not going to do it this time, but sometimes what I'll do is I will take the brake lever off and then I add just a tiny dab of anti-seize in between the lever and the piston for the brake. And then another good practice is to check the play in your clutch lever. Make sure that it's proper. If you need to tighten it, go ahead and tighten it from the upper handlebars here. But I'm happy with that play. Now that we have our oil changed, I'm going to go ahead and go to trip B. And I'm going to reset it because I just did the oil. So I'm going to reset that to 0. And trip B is going to be my oil. And then I like to use trip A for figuring out my fuel, how much in between each stops. But again, go through all of your buttons, turn signals, make sure all of your dash lights are working. Now I got oil light, traction control light, ABS, all that is on because I don't have the bike running, so. But just check everything, make sure all of your stuff is good to go. Alright, so now that we have our oil changed, we've checked all our fluids, everything's topped off, we've greased all of the levers and moving parts, checked our air filters, made sure our coolant was good. There's a few more things that you want to do, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with the bike, but it's just more to help you have more success on your long travels. One thing I always like to bring with me is a proper toolkit. Now, this is a $30-something, what was it, $39.99 toolkit that I had actually won from Cycle Gear at one of their bike nights. This is kind of my Africa Twin go-to now. You know, it's got simple stuff in it, a couple sockets, your standard metric sizes. One thing that is in there that I highly suggest everyone have is fuses, mini fuses and the bigger fuses. Allen wrenches, sockets, there's a pair of needle nose pliers, a ratchet, adjustable wrench, screwdriver, flathead, and Phillips. wrenches, a tire gauge, a piece of wire, some PVC electrical tape, and then one thing that I threw in there just to have is zip ties. You know, I got different sizes. I got the ones that mount into a hole, and then just a regular small zip ties. You can link these together. You can do all kinds of stuff with a few zip ties. I got the reusable zip ties. Just good to have with you on your journey. All right, so now that we have everything, we got our toolkit, bike's ready to go. There's a few more things that you want to keep in the back of your mind as you prepare for this trip. Number one, know your route. Pretty sure everyone is going to use mainly GPS, but plan your route out, see where you're heading, see if there's any shops along the way or something like that, just in case. Be like, okay, well, I'm having an issue here, let me go to this shop and take care of this. I know I called the shop in Mansfield, Ohio, and told them, hey, I'm going to be coming through such and such days. I would like to bring my bike in for a service, just to kind of have them go through everything. It's all stuff that I can do myself, but sometimes it's good to have a second pair of eyes, just go over your bike and check everything out for you. Another thing you could do is on your Facebook forums for your motorcycle. You know, a lot of us are in different forums for the motorcycle that we have. Maybe just make a post in there and tell, you know, the people of the group, hey guys, I'm going to be rolling through this area, or I'm going from here to here. Anybody along the way, just in case something happens. You know, and there's so many great people out there in the motorcycle community that are more than willing to help. They'll give you the shirt off their back. But that's why it's important to have a backup plan, just in case. Like for me, my mother lives in Live Oak, Florida, so I'll be rolling through Live Oak just to kind of stop there, stay the night, say hi, and then I'm going to continue on my way up into Tennessee. Probably stop and see my buddy Viper. I do have a couple friends that live in Tennessee, so if something happens, I can head on over there. My brother lives up in Ohio, so I can go and crash at his place if I needed to. And then I also have a friend, a YouTube friend that I had met through the KLR 650 and the KLR 650 forum and doing YouTube and stuff. Timothy Atkins. He actually lives not too far from where I'm going, and he says, bring the bike, you know, I have a full shop, anything you need. So that's why I went back to those Facebook forums. But if you think I missed anything, please go ahead and leave a comment down below and let me know what you think would make it better, easier on someone for long distance motorcycle rides. You know, I'm not getting into things like comfort or anything like that, but so if you guys like this content, please hit that subscribe button, follow along. I'll be taking this thing on a long journey and back, so be sure to be tuned for that. I am terrible at these intro, exits, outros, so please forgive me. But figure I'd bring you guys along. I'm tired. It's been a very long day. I'm Full Throttle Junkie, and I hope you have a wonderful day.